Everybody, and thank you for joining our Academy Finance Professionals National Conference. We're going to give it just 20 seconds or so. We've got a lot of people joining today's events. We'll give as many people as possible a chance to join.
People are expected to join.
About 1,200 people today, Melissa.
Wow,
Yeah,
okay,
so, it's got it's really popular events, and we normally get sort of 75–80% as well of that.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. Okay, according to my watch, we're ticking on to 10:01. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining today's Academy Finance Professionals National Conference. My name's Gavin Davies, and I'm Deputy Director for School Business Professional Division here at the Department for Education. I've worked with Academies here and in the Education and Skills Funding Agency for around 12 years, and my current role is all about supporting our school business professionals across the country. So I'm really delighted to be opening and chairing this national conference. Before we get started with our agenda, I just wanted to run through a couple of housekeeping items. So the first thing is that this session is being recorded. It will be available on the DfE YouTube page. You'll also receive a copy of the slides and the event. So anybody wondering if they can have a look at this, perhaps share it with their colleagues, we'll make sure that comes to you. Second is questions. So we really encourage questions at these events. Later on in the session, we're going to have a panel, and over the course of the event, we'll be reviewing the questions that you're asking, having a look at the most popular questions, and then putting those questions to our panel later on. If you see a question that particularly resonates with you, do use the upvote function. There's a like function and an upvote function on your screen. Do use the upvote function. That'll allow us to make sure we get the most popular questions and themes put to our panel for the session later today. So we've got a really full agenda today. In a moment, you're going to be hearing from our Minister, Minister McKinnell, Minister for School Standards. We've then got a session with John Edwards, Director General for Regions Group, part of the Department for Education. We're then delighted to be joined by one of our Academy trusts, Maiden Erlegh, and they're going to be talking about how they've used their people development strategy to improve recruitment and retention, which we know is a really big challenge across the sector at the moment. There'll be an opportunity to ask questions after that presentation. Then we'll take a short break, and after the break, we're going to hear from Tom Goldman, who leads our funding policy unit, and Tom's going to be talking about 2025-26 budgets. And finally, we have our panel Q&A session. And just a quick reminder, upvote those questions, and please do put your questions in the chat. On the panel this year, we have Tom Goldman, our Deputy Director for Funding Policy Unit. We have Gemma Peck, the Director of Funding in the Education and Skills Funding Agency. Nabil Ali is joining us. He's the Deputy Director for Teaching Workforce Strategy. And finally, we have my colleague Judy Ancorn, who's our Deputy Director for our South Division in Schools Financial Support and Oversight here within Regions Group. So really packed agenda, and without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our Minister.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And yeah, good morning, everyone. It really is a packed agenda. You've obviously got a busy morning ahead. So I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to introduce myself to you as the new Minister for School Standards. My name is Catherine McKinnell. I'm an MP from Newcastle, and I've been in Parliament for 14 years and obviously in government since July. And so it's a real honour to be in this position. And it's lovely to be here talking to you as the business professionals that are the school's unsung heroes. So really, you know, I know you lead the day-to-day, long-term and financial implications and management of schools and trusts. You look at it in the short term, the medium term and the longer term as well. And it's really important that you do, because everything needs to be costed and financed so that children and their families can confidently take up places in schools and colleges. And so managing resources efficiently is key to enabling schools and trusts to effectively develop and deploy their staff. You manage huge amounts of public money, with the total core funding reaching over £60 billion in 24-25. And I know you're going to talk about next year. So really, I want to just thank you, first and foremost, for everything you do, for the incredible job you do behind the scenes. You keep the financial wheels turning, and that means that teachers are free to teach and children are free to learn. And for that, we are really, truly grateful. So it's the government's mission to break down barriers to opportunity and improve the life chances for every child. And I'm sure you've noticed we've been pretty busy since we started in government, because we are really keen to make a start on all the things that we need to do. We listened to the sector very carefully whilst in opposition, and we've acted quickly where we can. We've abolished Ofsted's single headline grades, which provided little information for parents, but they were very high stakes for schools. And next academic year, the new system of report cards will provide a much richer and broader picture of school performance, which will not only provide that information that's really important, but it will also be really important for schools as well, to be able to see how they're doing and how they can learn from one another, which is where the new Regional Improvement for Standards and Excellence RISE teams will work in close collaboration on that to make sure that schools can progress and learn from one another. And that'll include supporting schools to achieve high standards on finance and resource management as well. So RISE teams will work to complement our ongoing offer to school business professionals, including the popular Power Hour online meetings every month, and the new local support offer as well, which provides in-person and practical training. And the school business professionals team is currently working with the RISE policy team across Regions Group to consider how our capability building initiatives can be part of that RISE offer to really support you in the school's financial management. And I know you're going to hear from John Edwards next, the Director General for Regions Group, and he'll be able to say much more about how the RISE teams will work to make the most efficient use of resources. You'll also have heard in the Chancellor's budget announcement an additional £2.3 billion for mainstream schools and young people with high needs for 25-26, which is an uplift on 24-25. It means overall core school funding will total £63.9 billion next year. And whilst I know you will be experiencing some very challenging circumstances within your settings, but this is positive news for the sector. And I know you'll already be thinking about how these changes will impact on your own schools and trusts. And Tom Goldman, the Deputy Director for Funding Policy, is going to be leading your session a little later. And so I'll leave him to explain in more detail how all that will work. And obviously you'll have the opportunity to ask questions as well, which is really important. So I guess the main message I want to give is that we really value everyone who works in our schools. We know how key you all are to contributing to a children's positive experience of education. I know Rob Buck for the Maiden Erlegh Trust will be speaking to you later about staff development, recruitment, retention, which is such an important way of maintaining a thriving and sustainable school community. And I can't stay online to listen to that, unfortunately, but I will make sure I get feedback on what he says, because making sure we have the teaching workforce that we need in our schools, we know is crucial to the outcomes that we want to see for children. And so obviously that's going to be a focus and a priority for you as well. And finally, you'll hopefully be aware that we've started the process of delivering 3,000 new or expanded school-based nurseries to plug gaps in local childcare. In the first phase of the scheme, primary schools have until the 19th of December to apply for up to £150,000 to make changes necessary to host or expand an on-site nursery. So it's only been 5 short months, but as you can see, there's a lot happening. And we are really determined to transform life chances, put education back at the forefront of national life, really break that link between where you come from and that it should not determine where you can go in life. And so I want to say, if you do have any questions about what's discussed today, do reach out, do take the opportunity to engage today, or reach out directly to the school's financial support and oversight directorate within Regents Group. It's really important that we do work in partnership to deliver the change we want to see. And they are really keen to help you to get your heads around any of the changes that we're making, but also the opportunities that we know you will want to grasp and make sure that your school or your trust can benefit from them. So please do use the team and do reach out and engage. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks for all you do. And I really hope that this morning is productive, because obviously the more we can help you to do what you do is going to help you to deliver the change that I know we're all working really hard to see. So thank you.
Minister, thank you so much for joining us today and speaking at the event.
Lovely, thank you.
And that's a really helpful segue actually from the Minister into our survey. So I think during the break you're going to get our survey link, and we really do want to make these events, as the Minister said, as valuable as possible for people. So please do take some time just to complete that survey and tell us what you'd like to hear at these events in the future. I'm now going to hand over to John Edwards, Director General for Regents Group, who's going to talk to us. Over to you, John.
Thank you very much, Gavin. I'm just checking you can hear me okay?
Yep.
All good. Excellent. So really good to see you all, and really pleased to be joining you today. So I'm John Edwards. I'm the Director General of the Regents Group, and I just caught the very tail end of the Minister's speech there. So she was talking about Regents Group, and I'm really privileged to be the Director General that heads up our group, and thank you to all of you for attending the event today. And it's great to see you. Not literally, of course, because we're virtual, but it is great to see you all. And I'm really pleased to be here. I used to be the Chief Exec for an interim period of the Education and Skills Funding Agency. And I was, I think, due to speak at one of these events back in 2021 when, unfortunately, COVID came along and floored me. So for me personally, it is great to be here now, and very pleased, I'm sure, to see lots of people who were around then, still around now, and give me the opportunity to say the most important thing I will say today, which is a massive thank you for the work that you do and for the contribution that you make to ensuring that children get the best start in life and go on to achieve and to thrive. And it was really good to hear the Minister just at the back end of what I heard, talking about the great work of the sector, and the financial and operational management skills and experience that you bring to schools and to trusts are absolutely the underpinning. They're central, first of all, to us making sure that the many millions of pounds of public money that we all spend are spent in the right way, but particularly, as I said, to support those priorities for children and young people. And I know that all that you do is really underpinned by that belief in and support for great outcomes for children and young people. The Minister may have talked about high and rising standards being at the heart of all we do, and we know that really great financial and operational management is the underpinning for that. So the connection between you and the outcomes for children and young people could not be closer. So I'm going to talk a little bit about one or two areas of change, and particularly talk to you about our new regional improvement for standards and excellence approach. But I just wanted to sort of take a step back really and acknowledge that it's been a really busy year for us, and I'm sure a busy year for you with change. Obviously, we've had the election, a new ministerial team. We've also had changes to the Education and Skills Funding Agency with the SFSO, that group directorate that is moving across into Regents Group as well. And certainly for me, I've been a civil servant for 7.5 years, worked in local government for 14 years before that, and was a school teacher and leader prior to that. Yeah, I know I'm quite old. And through that experience, it's always been about change, hasn't it? That leadership has always been about change. And it's been a real privilege to be in the department and in this leadership role as we have changed the new ministerial team. You'll have heard from Catherine, Minister McKinnell, her priority on really working to support schools, really working to make sure that our schools and trusts have got absolutely the best support and capacity available to them. And that determination to raise standards for every child, to have effective financial management, is going to be a cornerstone for that success. So, as I said, the school's financial support and oversight Directorate moved into the Regions Group. And I just wanted to give a sort of 2-second version of what that means for us. So as a Regions Group, we have 9 regional directors and plus a couple of directorates that work across the whole country, including now Schools Financial Support and Oversight, Gavin obviously, and many others working in that team with us, as well as some of the support functions we provide right across our group. And what that enables us to do is to bring together improvement, support and oversight for the school system together, to work with all of you on the government's mission to raise standards in education. And I think being able to bring that together and recognizing that SFSO, Schools Financial Support and Oversight work, really is at the heart of supporting the improvement in practice for all of you, for all of the sector in that financial and operational management, is really critical to the change we've made structurally, which we hope you will feel gradually over time as we integrate support for finance and operational activity into our wider improvement work. And that really is a segue into what I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about on the work we're doing around school improvement to help us to deliver the high and rising standards in education that we talked about. So I'm pleased to be able to introduce to you the concept of RISE, Regional Improvement for Standards and Excellence. Some of you may have dialed into the webinar we held a couple of weeks ago now, where we introduced the name and the concept to school leaders. But I do want to be able to just hone in a little bit on what RISE means, and how at the heart of it is to look at all the aspects of a school that contribute to the high and rising standards that I referred to. So through RISE, we will all be able to work together to create, I hope, a combination of targeted and universal support for those schools through their responsible bodies, their trusts or their local authorities, the support that they need. And it is very much not just about the RISE team itself, but about the collaboration with local authorities, with dioceses, and where appropriate with metropolitan combined authorities as well, to ensure a collective focus on the priorities that we have nationally, but also in each area and that are right for each individual school. Now, a slide's popped up. This is one of a longer deck, but we haven't got time for the full deck today. And I thought this might be the one that just gives us the best opportunity to say, well, what is RISE? And it starts on the left here with the RISE teams. And you may have heard that we will be making a combination of civil servants who already work here at the DFE and some expert advisors from the sector. And we're out for advertisement for those, making sure that we have access to, within our RISE teams, the really great support and capacity that will come from seconding people into our teams, but without, if you like, taking too much capacity out of the sector itself. And so we're adopting a flexible approach, which we expect to include part-time offers, as well as perhaps some retired experts that have the right skills and system leadership to build up, as you can see on the left, a RISE team consisting of advisors. So that's what a RISE team is, and they will report to the regional director in each of the 9 regions. I'm sure you're familiar with the regions. They're the regions that have been in place for lots of different functions over a long period of time: North East, Yorkshire and Humber, the North West, and so on and so forth. And we'll have one of those RISE teams in each of our regions. So what RISE will do is to ensure support for all schools. And you'll see from the slide that we have a universal offer, the support there in the top green box, and then our targeted support in the orange box as well. So the universal support will be in the form of signposting to different hubs, curriculum hubs, attendance hubs, etc., to CPD and to financial support as well. And we want to continue to build on the strong local, regional support network so that leaders can share the best practice that we know is out there in the system right now, as well as build local networks, which is so important. And so you can see in that box the mix, if you like, of types of support that will be available, including, crucially for you, support for developing financial management and operational activity as well. So that's the universal part, and obviously, there'll be lots of opportunities to unpack that further going forward. And we absolutely would see responsible bodies working with their schools to be identifying and self-identifying the kind of support that they will need. Identifying it through the signposted offer, and also in time when implemented, the report cards, the Ofsted report cards, which will provide a more granular assessment to help schools self-identify the support needed with their responsible bodies, but also to know where the very best of practice is across the system. So the school report card really supporting that universal support offer. Down to the orange box. Do excuse me a second. Excuse me. We have the targeted support arrangements for schools that need that extra support. Here, working through our advisors and our RISE teams, we will make sure that we've commissioned a strong organisation. That might be a local authority partnership, or it might be a multi-academy trust that have the school improvement capacity, and they will work with the responsibility and through them the school to create a bespoke package of support tailored to your circumstances. Funded where needed, it may well not need to be funded in all situations, and that package of support is intended to last for 12, maybe even 18 or up to 24 months. And those packages are going to be really important, drawing on the expertise and evidence of great practice right across the system. And you can see on the right the local partners in all of this process of the diocese, the hubs that we know of, research schools, obviously, and importantly, for financial management oversight and operational matters, our school resource management advisors, who will absolutely be part of the capacity that can be deployed as part of that targeted support package that will be in place for those schools that need it. So what we hope is we will be able to build those targeted support packages in a way that keeps responsibility for improvement with the responsible body, but provides that plan, if you like, a bespoke plan of targeted support, which will enable that responsibility to really drive improvement within the individual school. So I hope that makes a lot of sense. I think our overall goal is to bring coherence, to bring clarity in setting out priorities for local areas, and we can only do that by working closely with partners. So there'll be some priorities which will be national priorities. I'm sure we could all agree that school attendance will be a national priority, and I'm sure special educational needs, disability as well. Two obvious priorities, I think, for all of us. But there'll also be some priorities that are specific to an area, to even a subgroup of an area, or a particular type of school, where local leaders want to work collaboratively and collectively to achieve success. And our RISE teams will absolutely be there to support that too. And in the longer term, that building on the report cards that will replace the Ofsted ratings will be really significant, I think, to making sure we can all see, identify and spot the areas we need to work on, but also where the very best of practice is available. Now, at the heart of this, of course, as I've said, is that financial and operational management, which you provide, which is at the heart of enabling responsible bodies and schools to deliver those high and rising standards where young people can achieve, they can thrive, and they can have their very best start in life. So in addition to the School Resource Management Advisor Programme, which we feel has really added capacity and strength to the system, we want to continue to support you through the provision we make from the department. That includes a local support offer, providing in-person practical training at regional events, covering financial, leadership, HR subjects, and we hope that those events will continue to be really helpful. Our mentoring program, which I know has really been welcomed, which aims to support you in developing the skills, confidence and capability for your roles, really drawing on those who've got that great experience in these roles. Our webinars, which are free to access hour-long webinars aimed at school business professionals and also at school leaders, governors, trustees. And the latest round of these launched early this month. And finally, we'll continue with a limited number of qualification bursaries for the Level 7 diploma in school financial and operational leadership. And I hope that offer, if you like, continues to show our priority for the work that you do, and our support for all of you in undertaking that work, and just how much we value the secure financial and operational management that you bring, that underpins the focus on our ministers' goals of ensuring we have those high and rising standards throughout the system. And of course, there's other work happening across the DFE, outside Regions Group as well, on procurement, on estate management and IT. And we hope all of that will be really beneficial to you in undertaking your role. So I'm nearly finished, you'll be pleased to hear, but we do want to really continue to work with you to make sure the offer we make meets your needs and the needs of your colleagues and others that you know of, helping you to access the right CPD, building your capability, and I hope enabling you to grow and advance in your careers as well, because I think it's really important for all of us, isn't it, that we can see our own pathway in leadership roles. This is all because, and I've said it throughout what I've had to say today, we know just how important and essential the role is that school business professionals play. Your financial and operational management of schools is so central to achieving smooth running of schools, really effective and good use of resource for all that taxpayers' money that we're privileged to spend, and that crucially our teachers and support staff have everything they need to deliver that great education for our children. So last of all, I want to say a big thank you again. Thank you for the work that you do. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event, and I really look forward to continuing to work with you all in the future, and maybe at some regional events, meeting some of you in person. So thanks a lot, Gavin. I think it's all back with you, but take care, everybody. Have a really good event, and thank you for the work that you do. Bye for now.
John, thank you so much for taking the time out today. John Edwards, Director General of Regions Group. Before I hand over to Maiden Erlegh Trust, who are going to talk to us about how they manage their recruitment and retention strategy, I want to give a reminder to please feel free to put any questions in the chat during the presentation. There will be an opportunity, hopefully, for a little bit of a Q&A after the presentation. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Sylvie de Groot from Maiden Erlegh Trust. Over to you, Sylvie.
Thank you, Gavin. We are really excited to be here today to share with you our Trust People Development Strategy to improve recruitment and retention. Next slide, please. So I'm Sylvie de Groot. I'm the CFO at Maiden Erlegh Trust, and I'm joined by Rob Buck, one of our school improvement directors who leads on people development across the organisation. Next slide, please. So Maiden Erlegh Trust is a multi-academy trust consisting of 3 hubs with 2 primary schools, 4 secondary schools and 3 specialist schools spanning Berkshire and Oxfordshire. We are proud of our diverse community of schools, which ranges from nursery to 6th form and includes resource provision units both in primary and secondary hubs, and specialist provision to cater to complex learning needs. As a trust, we employ just under 800 staff. Next slide, please. Looking at the current educational climate, I'm sure we can all agree we face many challenges within recruitment and retention of quality staff. Like probably many of you, we have experienced an increase in open vacancies. There was an article published in Schools Week back in June, which highlighted that 8.8% of the teaching force left last year, and there was a 20% hike in vacancies between 22-23 and 23-24. Also, as more housing estates are being built and new schools are opened, that demand only grows. So due to the demand, we sometimes have to resort to agencies, which has a profound impact on the budget due to the high costs. So these are just some of the challenges we face in recruitment. The next slide, please. As with recruitment, retention is also a challenge due to the ever-increasing workload, accountability and pressure faced by teaching and support staff within the sector. We are currently facing the perfect storm, really. The challenges to recruit together with the retention challenges due to the high workload and stress experienced by teaching and educational staff. And as CFOs, it is our task to balance the books, but this usually comes at a cost to our staff. whether that is a cut in resources, cuts in staff, cuts in providing training opportunities and maintaining or upgrading our facilities and IT. All of these cuts that we feel we have to implement year on year weigh heavy on stress and job satisfaction for our staff. Next slide, please. A recent research paper confirmed the issues we are currently facing. I do recommend you have a look at the paper on the worldwide study of teacher shortages, which came out a couple of weeks ago. We are clearly not the only country struggling with the teacher shortage. However, it did highlight the fact that teachers in England are the most unhappy with their job. So we do really need to focus on that. Next slide, please. So to overcome these challenges, we are implementing a set of strategies and practices focused on 3 key pillars. They are compensation and benefits, strategic human resource management, and cultivating learning environments and professional growth. Next slide, please. Our first pillar is compensation and benefits. Our pay scales follow the National Joint Council and STRB recommendations, with an extension to the NJC pay scales to cover director roles. Depending on the roles, we sometimes offer recruitment and retention payments. Our benefits include Perkbox, which also offers a wellness hub. We offer a Me Day, which is an extra paid day off for the staff to focus on well-being. We pay for some eye care, flu vaccinations. These are just to name a few. We were looking at offering an electric car scheme, but as we now need to seek ESFA approval, we put a pin in it for now, but we will further investigate the possibilities around this. Next slide, please. Our second pillar is strategic human resource management. Our HR function is fully centralized and supports schools with recruitment and employee relations from start to finish. Having a centralized understanding of the recruitment need in each school enables us to focus on priority vacancies. It gives us an awareness of other roles within the trust, which enables transfers and secondments and career opportunities. It supports us with ICFP ratio analysis, as well as having a better managed vacancy database, and we can organize centralized staff recruitment days. Next slide, please. Our third pillar is based around cultivating learning environments and professional growth, which supports us in addressing the challenges around retention and recruitment. And this is focused around staff development and staff support networks, tackling the issues around job satisfaction, workload, and stress. This is a pillar we are very proud of and is led by Rob Buck, who will explain this in more detail. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you very much, Sylvie, and welcome colleagues on the call. Part of my role is to cultivate intentional professional learning environments and develop professional growth pathways for colleagues across all functional areas of our organisation. As part of this remit, I oversee Maiden Erlegh Institute, which is our trust, research, training and development hub. Next slide, please. Over the last few years, the Institute has grown quickly in size in terms of dedicated areas of work, but I suppose at its core, the purpose it serves is to identify and retain talent and provide quality professional development opportunities for our colleagues, from initial teacher trainees through to the Chief Executive Officer, and across all of our different support staff functions. The key for us has been a relentless drive to embed a culture of professional learning and development, which over time has helped to actively improve morale, job satisfaction, and therefore recruitment and retention. Having a carefully curated offer of development that is regularly communicated to colleagues via a number of different medium has helped to create a culture of professional learning. We have decided to focus on providing a range of in-person courses based upon the needs of our schools, supported by half-termly online professional learning carousels, and a series of opportunities to bring colleagues together to foster cohesion and networking. This is then supported by trust-wide differentiated career pathways, our annual Trust Conference, and the National College CPD platform. Next slide, please. To support our work, we have developed a Trust People Development curriculum, which outlines our offer in one central place, providing an outline of all of the opportunities we offer as an organisation. We encourage colleagues to own their own professional career journeys, supported by us at school and at trust level. Next slide, please. In order to signpost professional development opportunities to colleagues across our organisation, we initially spent considerable time creating differentiated career pathways, but more importantly, signposting the how colleagues can take advantage of the opportunities we offer to further develop and deepen the skills, the knowledge, and relevant competencies. Next slide, please. Through regular consultation with local school CPD leaders and head teachers, we design CPD training based upon need or emerging gaps. We also try to audit and identify where we will require talent in the coming years and then design courses accordingly. For example, we are running an aspiring head teacher and aspiring Senko workshops this year. We have recently recruited 3 hub lead practitioners in research and innovation who will be instrumental in helping me to further develop our hub-based approach to CPD delivery. Next slide, thank you. One of the more recent additions to our offer is the introduction of a regular programme of online professional learning carousels aimed at teaching and learning, leadership, support staff, and a broader staff for all colleagues. We were particularly keen to launch a pathway for our support staff colleagues within the school day, which is proving particularly popular. For example, just next week, we are running sessions such as navigating your professional journey, specifically aimed at support staff, elevating academic writing in the secondary classroom aimed at teaching and learning colleagues. We are also offering navigating change and mastering the art of transformation, which will be aimed at our leadership colleagues. We offer a broad range of sessions for all staff. For example, Sylvie recently delivered a financial wellbeing and pensions workshop. Next slide, please. As our organisation has grown to 9 schools, one of our non-negotiables was our desire to not lose our community of schools ethos. So we decided to introduce cohesion and networking opportunities to bring like-minded colleagues together once a term. As a MAT, we deliver a wide range of school improvement and outreach work, which helps us to cover any associated costs of running such cohesion events. Between now and the Christmas holidays, we will be facilitating leadership suppers, a Women in Leadership network, and a teaching and learning working group. Next slide, thank you. One element that has made a significant difference to retention is signposting appropriate apprenticeship levy funded courses and writing examples into our people development curriculum as a vehicle for professional that colleagues are interested in the higher level apprenticeships, for example, at master's level. And this helps us to develop a culture of everyone is a lifelong learner. As an effective way of investing in homegrown talent and developing a pipeline of teaching professionals, we now offer the postgraduate teacher apprenticeship to appropriate colleagues via our apprenticeship levy funding. Next slide, thank you very much. Another form of professional and purposeful development for teaching colleagues has been effectively signposting relevant national professional qualifications and then asking colleagues to share research, implementation project findings and current research and thinking with colleagues through staff meetings and briefings across the organisation. Next slide, thank you. One aspect we believe we are particularly proud of is our relentless pursuit to bring people together as often as we can. We are currently designing 4 hub-based conferences for our organisation planned for February 25, with support staff having their own distinct conference. We run a large number of cluster and network groups across the organisation, but our METPod platform is a popular method to share knowledge and expertise in a modern and convenient way, which we believe is one of our unique selling points. Next slide, thank you. The most important question to ponder is the so what? How do we know that the work we're doing is making a significant difference to our organisation? I've pulled out a couple of the points from the slide that we're sharing with you. But for example, we actively interview all of our initial teacher trainees in the autumn term to recruit for the following year where appropriate. And we gain buy-in from all of the head teachers from across our organisation. Over the last few years, we have seen a positive increase in how staff view professional and career opportunities across the organisation, and CPD and training is generally well received with good attendance, particularly as our online learning carousels are voluntary this academic year. There is a frequent cycle of internal recruitment and promotion opportunities, and we know that our staff value having the opportunities to be seconded across our organisation. The apprenticeship levy and our CPD offer is also helping to increase staff retention, job satisfaction, and more generally morale across our multi-academy trust. Next slide, thank you. So thank you for listening to our presentation. Please do let us know if you have any specific questions for either Sylvie or myself. Thank you for listening.
Well, Sylvie, thank you so much for that presentation. That was really fascinating, and thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedules to present that to us. We have had a couple of questions through in the chat. I think, first of all, obviously you've set out a really comprehensive programme there, and colleagues were wondering how long that's taken you to develop over time.
So it certainly has not happened overnight. We have been working at putting together our people development strategy for probably 2 to 3 years, and we are building on our programme each year by incorporating different aspects of CPD delivery. So, for example, our online learning carousels are a new feature to this year's programme, and the reason that we are offering these is to try to be more modern in our approach to CPD delivery, but it's also having a look through the feedback, because we evaluate everything that we do, and colleagues across the organisation thought that offering online learning carousels where they feed specifically into the titles would be a good way to move forward. We also have, moving forward, our 3 very newly recruited lead practitioners, and that is to really build upon our research and innovative approach to CPD delivery. So we're really excited as to where the direction of travel goes with the newly recruited colleagues.
Thanks very much. We also had, I think, some interest in the chat from your wellbeing, some of your wellbeing initiatives. I think particularly the Me Days that you talked about, and I think the questions are coming through in sort of 2 angles. I think first of all, there's interest from colleagues about the cost. So you know, what kind of cost does the trust face from doing that, and that kind of VFM angle. And then secondly, any impacts you've seen. So have you seen, for example, changes in, you know, morale, job satisfaction, perhaps sickness absence as a result of this initiative?
So I think in terms of cost, it is very difficult to quantify exactly how much it's costing to the trust. I would say it's more of a culture in the trust that we are trying to identify. So colleagues have to ask upfront if they want to take a me day. It has to be planned and scheduled so that cover can be provided, and the cover is provided by other colleagues. So we really rely on other staff within our trust community to help and support other colleagues taking that one day off a year. And we are talking about one day a year. If you think about absence cover due to sickness and everything is costing us a lot more. Having that one day of well-being really lifts people up, and I think that outweighs the cost, which is difficult to quantify because not everybody takes that day. People take that day because there's a wedding of a close family relation or something, and for people to be able to attend that without having to worry, or how am I going to plan this and do this? It's all planned in advance, and colleagues really support each other with this.
Mm. To add to that, the Me Day is actually offered to all colleagues across the organisation. It's not just teaching staff, which really helps to build this culture of one trust, one team, which we really try to remind staff as often as we possibly can. The other thing as well is we have wellbeing groups who are networked in all of our schools, and they help to feed into what the feeling is on the ground as to well-being and how we can, from a trust perspective, help to develop the culture even further.
Thank you very much. It's really helpful. Just a couple more questions coming through the chat. I think there's one question here actually about the apprenticeship levy. Are there any sort of plans as the funding and the changes to the growth and skills levy come in, as the trust thought about how those changes might affect their work then?
We are using the apprenticeship levy currently to provide training opportunities for our support staff, and we work very closely with the business managers to identify appropriate colleagues. We like most trusts of our size, have quite a lot of money to spend in the apprenticeship levy, so we want to really make sure that we capitalise and provide as many opportunities as we can. We meet very regularly with the school business managers and the head teachers, and they help us to shape kind of the strategy moving forward as to how we will get the most out of the apprenticeship levy. But it's mainly our support staff colleagues. But as I said during the presentation, we have seen an uptick in those who want to upskill in terms of the higher level, so the masters, and we have had a lot of staff, and it has to be the right staff if we're using the apprenticeship levy, but staff that are in HLTA roles or TA roles who are very interested in staying with the organisation. So we will be signposting the use of the levy for the postgraduate teacher apprenticeship, because we see the value in investing in homegrown talent. It makes sense to us. We're all facing a teacher recruitment and retention crisis. So if we've got eager colleagues within our mat already, it kind of makes sense for us to invest in them using the levy.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. We're still seeing questions coming in, which is fantastic. Clearly, this presentation has prompted a lot of thoughts from colleagues. I think I'm just going to put two together. I think there was a reflection on a report from the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development that is about benchmarking employee turnover, and I think the person that's made the comment has made the point that actually, this is something that we should almost accept. It's something that's almost a bit of a nature of some of our work now. And so, is there a bit of a change of approach, change of thinking, and acceptance that actually there's not a lot we can do, or not as much as we'd like, that we can do when it comes to retention, and that recruitment should be a real focus. There's a very specific question about the top slice that the trust charges. So anything that you'd like to say on that front as well would be really helpful.
Yeah, so we don't top slice. We use the gag pooling method to fund our schools and our central services. So yeah, for people who know how the gag pooling method works, you know, you kind of look at the cost of your central services, and the budgets are cost based, really. You know, we look at how much it costs to run a school. So there are no you know, surpluses, as to say. We always have a balanced budget and break even, but we use the gag pooling methodology.
Brilliant. And any thoughts? I mean, you might not have. I haven't read that CIPD report, but I wondered if you sort of had any thoughts. I mean, do you think it's something in terms of turnover that you know is almost a fact of life, or are you kind of a little bit more positive about actually the impact we can have here on it?
I think we are realistic, and that there is only so much we can do. We believe by offering quite a robust and comprehensive CPD support package, but also taking into consideration well-being and aspects like that, that we're doing as much as we probably can be. We know that through the nature of the sector that there will be people that join and leave, and you know, we are happy to come to terms with that. But we want to make sure that where we can retain talent and quality staff, we do all we can to make sure that happens.
And in terms of recruitment, making the offer attractive for people to join our trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, Rob, Sylvie, thank you so much for that presentation and for helping us with those questions. Really insightful presentation. I'm joined in the room by Nabil Ali, Deputy Director for Teacher Workforce Strategy. And Nabil's kindly joining us for our panel later on. Right now, we're handing over to Tom Goldman, who's going to give us a presentation about budgets. Tom, I'm going to hand over to you, if that's okay.
Thanks very much indeed. Good morning, everybody. Great to have this opportunity to talk with so many of you today about a subject very close to my heart, school budgets. As you've been told, my name is Tom Goldman. I'm the Deputy Director in charge of DfE's Funding Policy Unit, and we have responsibility for discussing with Treasury how much should be provided to schools each year, and then how we should distribute that funding for mainstream schools in respect of their 5 to 16-year-old pupils, and for high needs. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you very much. To be clear, I'm talking about the revenue or running costs funding that schools receive, not capital funding. So I will not be covering capital funding in this session, and apologies for anyone who was hoping to learn more about that. In my 15 minutes or so, I'm going to cover three things: the national budget and the national funding position for next year, as was announced at the autumn budget last month. I shall be covering how we'll be distributing that funding, both from the national to the local level, and then from local to individual schools. And I'll say a little about what we currently know about two significant demands that will be there on next year's budgets. The kind of less usual one of the changes to the national insurance contributions that were announced at the budget, and the regular annual pay awards cycle. Let's have the next slide. Thank you very much. So as the Minister said in her introduction, the core schools budget for next year is rising by £2.3 billion, which is a bit more than a 3.5% cash increase over the 61.6 billion we have in the current financial year. And that turns into a slightly higher increase in per pupil terms, as our forecast is that there will be a small decline in the total number of pupils nationally, particularly on the primary side of things. Secondary schools more coming to a plateau, and we expect numbers to decline there in the future, but not so much next year. The core schools budget represents the total we have available for mainstream schools core budget, GAG for academies, for the high needs budget for local authorities, funding special schools and providing SEND top-up funding, the pupil premium, and in the current year, 3 further grants that over last couple of years we've established, which have provided funding in respect of recent pay awards and the increase in pension contributions that came in from April 24, April this year. I'll say a little bit more about our plans for those grants a little bit further on, but that is what the core schools budget and what that increase to the core schools budget covers. One really important thing to make sure people have noticed in this, that's a £2.3 billion increase overall. Within it, there's a £1 billion increase dedicated to high needs. So that's about 40% of the total funding increase being provided nationally. And obviously that reflects the continuing rise in costs we're seeing there and the acute pressure that local authorities' high needs budgets have been and continue to be under. Now, as it stands at the moment, we don't have budgets set beyond the next financial year, beyond 25-26. Phase 2 of the spending review will give us that longer term picture and will be a multi-year spending review, so will give us more than a 1-year additional picture. I obviously do not know what that longer term picture will be. The discussions with Treasury have not even kicked off yet. They will do so very shortly. And Treasury have told us that they will conclude in the late spring. And before anyone asks, no, I don't know exactly when Treasury thinks spring is either. We will, of course, be making sure that Treasury have heard the case for further investment in schools loud and clear, although I assume that across the rest of Whitehall, other government departments will be similarly be making sure that Treasury have heard their cases for investment in other aspects of the public sector as well. But we will do all we can to make sure that schools' position is very well understood. Next slide, please. Now, those national numbers give a sense of the scale of overall investment for next year, but they don't answer what any individual school is going to receive. Unfortunately, the timing of the general election has meant a significant delay to our usual processes. In a normal year, we'd have published the national funding formula in July. As it is, I'm expecting we will manage to publish that at the end of this month, in a week or so's time. In order to minimize the delay, to ensure that's not delayed any further, we're not making any major changes on how we distribute funding next year. So individual schools' budgets will continue to be determined by local funding formulae. We will be expecting local authorities to bring those local formulae closer to the national norms. And again, I'll cover that more in a moment. And local authorities are going to continue overseeing the high needs budget. One important change, which I said I would say, is what we're doing in relation to those 3 pay and pensions grants. They are all being rolled into the national funding formula and into core GAG payments for 25-26. And it's very important that we're clear about that. Next year, the funding that has been previously up to date has been received through those separate grants will instead be provided as an integral part of 25-26 allocations, and they won't be continuing as separate things. For academies, that means those grants will continue to provide payments to the end of August 25. Obviously, the new funding year starting September 25. But in setting their budgets for 25-26, there won't be additional money coming in on top of what's in the local formula in relation to TPAG, CSBG, or the pensions grant. In another change from our normal processes for the year, that recognising the NFF is so late, we have published a note about what we will be in there. I've included a link in the slides, which you'll get following the event. And that does set out our provisional factor values in the school's NFF, so the amount per pupil of free school meals, the size of the lump sum, etc. And it also sets out the kind of minimum and maximum increases in high needs funding, which will be between a 7 and 10% cash increase for each local authority. Next slide, please. You'll probably be glad to learn I'm not going to spend any time on this slide, which I've really included as a reminder of what those factors that we use in the school's NFF. The policy document I've just referred to sets out what the provisional value for each of those will be for next year. And at the end of this month, we should be publishing the final version, which I expect to say no change to those provisional values. But if you're interested, again, there's a link to details about the 24-25 NFF, which we will be very much mirroring in 25-26. Next slide. So that was all about the national distribution. Individual schools' budgets depend on the local formula. Again, no real changes there, including no change to the direction of travel we've had over recent years of obliging local authorities to move their local formulae closer towards the national formula so that the overall system is moving towards national consistency. Worth noting, 123 local authorities are now mirroring the NFF in their local formulae, and the rules we have in place mean the remaining 28 will be moving closer to the NFF as well next year. It's also worth focusing for a minute on the minimum funding guarantee, the lowest per pupil increase that schools will receive. Local authorities can set that between 0% and minus 0.5% next year. That is a little tighter than it was in the current year, where the range is from 0 to plus 0.5. So as I say, a bit tighter on that minimum funding guarantee than it is the current year. Despite the NFF itself being delayed, we're aiming for schools nonetheless to receive their budgets for 25-26 to the usual timetables, and the pupil premium rates, which are not part of the NFF, will be announced as usual in December. I know you'll also be interested in funding streams like the PE sport premium or the universal infant free school meal money. Those aren't counted as part of the core schools budget, and as usual, funding for those will come later in the year. Next slide. Thanks very much. Just to finish up on national insurance and pay. Starting with national insurance. Treasury have promised to provide additional funding in respect of the NICS increase for public sector employers. So that covers all state-funded schools. What we don't have yet from Treasury is exactly how much they will give us for that, although we are hoping to have nailed that down with them very shortly. However, that does mean it will be too late to incorporate that additional funding into the 25-26 without creating excessive delay to getting the NFF published. That means that having tidied away the previous pay and pensions grants into the NFF and GAG for next year, we are going to need to set up a new supplementary grant specifically for those NICS payments for 25-26. We'll be doing that as quickly as we can once we know the grand total we have to play with, and setting out what schools will be receiving as a result, again, as quickly as we possibly can. And having done that for 25-26, we'll be looking to roll that money into the NFF and GAG from 26-27. One important point to bear in mind, we will be trying to ensure the best fit we can between the distribution of that funding for NICS and where NICS costs will fall, but we won't ever be able to deliver a 100% match. So there will be some schools which will get a little bit more, will get a little bit more in funding than the NICS costs they face. There will also be some schools which get a little bit less. Finally, on pay, I mean, it won't come as a surprise to you that I'm not able to tell you what the 2025 teacher or support staff pay awards are going to be. Both are being determined through their usual processes for next year. We will, as usual, be paying close attention to the pressures that those pay awards will place on schools and how that compares to the funding that schools are receiving. Again, I can't speculate here on whether that will mean there will be a further pay grant in respect of the 2025 awards. That's going to depend on a lot of factors, the size of those awards, not least among them, but the availability of funding across government, not irrelevant either. I think it is worth recalling here the wider economic and fiscal picture. Government has been pretty clear about the overall pressures on public spending. Difficult decisions have had to be made across the public sector as a result. Schools cannot be entirely isolated from that and insulated from those decisions. So what I'm really saying is I don't think that the fact that in 2024 the pay award came with an additional grant, I don't think that can be taken as any guarantee that the 2025 pay award will have an additional grant coming with it as well. That's all remains to be seen over the coming months. One small improvement that should be this year is that the STRB process is being brought forward with an expectation that the 2025 awards will be announced earlier, as soon as possible after April 25. So that should hopefully make at least planning for 2025-26 that little bit easier. Right, that's my 15 minutes done. So I shall stop now and hand back. Thanks very much, Gavin.
Tom, thank you very much. Really informative presentation as ever. We've had, I think, one specific question on the back of your presentation, which I'll go through now, and then we'll head into our panel Q&A session. And thank you, everybody, for your questions in the chat. The team are really busy behind the scenes having a look at those for us. Tom, the question is for you. So when excluding the inclusion of grants, I think core schools budget grant in the 25-26 general annual grant, is it correct that we should assume that the true increase for GAG will be between 0 and 1%? For example, free school meals proposed increase from £490 to £495, so 1%. And the question goes on to say it's concerning if free school meals will increase by only 1%, given the minimum living wage increasing by over 6% in April 2025, and food and catering provider inflation likely to increase in April 2025 due to the employer NI increases for them. And I was wondering if you wanted to say anything on that.
Yeah, it's quite we've found it difficult to come up with a really clear, simple comparison between the 25 rates and the 24 rates, because rolling in those three grants and seeking to take account of the fact that the additional funding provided in the current year in respect of the 2025 pay awards only covers 7 months worth of that pressure in relation to teachers. But obviously next year from April, schools will be facing 12 months of those pressures. Clearly, the questioner has seen the numbers, so that's right. That's against what's a slightly artificial baselines. Those increases of that ilk, and there will be, if I've been clear, we recognise there are going to be pressures on schools next year. There are pressures across the whole public sector. I think we've got a relatively good settlement across compared to other parts of the public sector, but that did not mean schools will be insulated from pressures, because they will not be. Yes, it is not going to be simple to make those budgets balance, although each school, it'll depend on the individual circumstances.
Tom, thanks very much, and thank you obviously for being part of our panel, which we're going to move into seamlessly now. And obviously, any more questions for Tom, we'll aim to consider those for our panel. And I should say at this point, welcome to our panel members. I can see Gemma, Tom, and Judy on screen, and Nabil kindly joining in the room in London as well. So first question we've had is actually one pretty close to my heart, given that one of my roles is leading the department's work on the School Resource Management Advisors programme. But Judy, this is a question for you, and the question is, would you be able to outline the role and remit of the school's financial support and oversight directorate that the Minister mentioned, and how this interacts with the SRMA programme?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Gavin. So our priority in SFSO is to support Academy trusts and maintain schools through their local authority so that they're able to maintain good financial health and governance. Because as we heard from the Minister and John Edwards this morning, that's a really key element in enabling the provision of excellent education. So one of the ways in which we do that is by using the financial data that you already provide to us to offer support to individual trusts so that we can engage with you early and offer support to make sure that any risks that may be emerging are dealt with before they really become issues. And SRMAs are a really key part of that support offer, and we'll continue to be providing that free, independent and tailored support to meet the needs of individual schools and trusts. And we also have the SRM programme as well, which offers a great suite of tools to support schools and trusts managing their finances. There's a great offer there, including things like information about better ways of procuring goods and services, and really important tools to help understand data, because obviously to make good decisions, trusts and schools really need to be able to understand their data. So the short answer is that we will continue to really utilise that SRMA programme to help and provide support to schools now that we've moved into Regions Group. So I hope that answers the question, Gavin.
Does. Thank you very much, Judy. And yeah, we work really closely together, don't we? Geographically here, based in London, but also our aims and ethos for the programme. Thank you very much. Next question is for the bill and perhaps an element of Tom as well, but we'll see how we go. And it's a question that I know will resonate with a lot of the sector, and this is about the timing of the Teachers' Pay Awards. And the question is about the timing of the Teachers' Pay Awards in relative to budgets and the expectation of Academy Trust budget returns that come to us. It really is the biggest cost for schools, and we really need to know the percentage. Otherwise, it's very difficult for us to submit our budget returns, is the question. Bill, anything you'd like to say on that?
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. Thanks for the question. I think first acknowledging that last year, of course, it was very delayed, but I think most of you know the reason behind it. We had an election in the middle, and understandably was left to the new government. But I'm hoping the positive we took out was it was one of the government's first decisions. So that's a priority they put on it. And I would argue, I'm sure Tom will as well, that we got a very good settlement from Treasury on that. Of course, one of the things we want to do is speed up really much more than last year, this year around. I think Tom pretty much answered the question, giving April as kind of our outline which you're targeting. But just to give you kind of some of the process in between, so you'll be aware on 30th September, the Secretary wrote out to the SDRB chair, setting out the remit, and we are now expecting to send our evidence to the SDRB in December. That's not definite, but that's pretty much what we're expecting to do. We're pretty much there, and we're expecting the sectors as well to send the evidence pretty quickly. But as you are aware, there are processes in between. A key one, of course, is working with Treasury to get the best settlement that we can, and that understandably takes a bit of time. But as Tom mentioned, April is what we're really going for. We'll always try to compress it as much as we can, but I think that is the flip side of it, is trying to get the best absolute offer that we can. So it's a bit of the least we can, but at the same time, the best offer that we can for the sector. So yes, we're trying to compress it. April is still probably our rough outline, but we're going to keep working to see how much we can condense it for further.
Thank you very much. Really helpful. Tom, was there anything you'd like to add there?
I was just going to note that, I mean, there is a tension here that certainly I've played through with colleagues who deal with pay on a number of times, because of course, obviously, I'm basically pressing them to say, why can't you do it earlier? It would make budgeting so much easier if this whole process could be done earlier, and that's entirely true and correct. I mean, the point that they will quite rightly make back, though, is that the earlier the pay award is done, the longer the gap between a decision on what teachers' pay will be and when that pay is being offered. And so fundamentally, the greater a chance that the wrong decision is made on pay because events, other factors happen elsewhere. It's not being made in relation to the most up-to-date estimates of what's happening on everyone else's pay as well. So that, I mean, there is just a fundamental tension in that we'd love to get the pay award done really early, but we'd also love to have the most up-to-date data and information available at the point the pay award is decided upon. I don't think there's any way of avoiding that. You make a compromise between those two. Hopefully we make about the right one. Hopefully bringing things a bit earlier will give us greater benefit on the planning side without too much detriment on the kind of correctness of what the pay award ends up being. That was all.
Thank you very much. And we've had a question in now. I think a really heartfelt question from somebody, one of our colleagues in the sector, sort of saying it's really great to receive thanks and recognition for the essential role that we carry out in our schools, I think, as finance, as school business professionals. However, is there an understanding of the impact? And the question goes on to talk about the disparity in the recent pay rises and the impact that's having on school business professionals as that group. The question says that for the third year running, we've received the lowest percentage pay increase of all staff in schools, and it goes on to say about the low morale that's led to colleagues leaving the profession. And the question finishes by making the point that if financial management is to be included in the new school report card, will school business professionals be recognised in the same way as our senior team teaching staff and colleagues? Did you have any reflections on that?
Yes, I'm not going to answer all parts of it, but I'll do my best. I think the first point obviously is a very key one, and recognition and the support that we give support staff. Sorry, excuse the pun. I'm sure you're all aware, of course, that we're reinstating the school support staff negotiating body, and that is a key move for us on pay and fairness around pay, that we do have this independent body that advises like they do have for teachers. I'll just quickly run through a bit of the detail on that. You probably are most of it, but I think it's still worth knowing, especially the timeline. I think timeline is probably quite key for all of you. So again, we want to move very, very quickly on this. And as you know, we are basically introducing this as a part of the Employment Rights Bill, and the initial measure was put forward on 10th of October. So that was quite quick. But now there's a bit of a compulsory process we have to go through. It's unfortunate, but I think it's the right thing to do. I think you have to consult the right people, make sure the right decision is being made but we do understand that it has to be done quite quickly. However, our expectations are, because of the process that are required to set it up, the earliest, probably the most likely year in which there'll be a recommendation for is 27-28. That's not set in stone, but that is our kind of guiding time at the moment. Again, we will try and make sure we can do as quickly as we can, as already kind of outlined how quickly we're moving on this already. But again, getting this decision right. And just quickly to outline that the body is expected to have representation from employers, from support staff, there'll be an independent chair, of course, and of course representation from the government itself, so Secretary of State's representation. But more and more detail will be available quite quickly, but I did want to both outline we're moving quickly, but set a realistic timeline on when this can happen. But I think overall the main message, that really outlines the importance that the current government is placing on support staff and making sure there's a fair pay and a process for it. So hopefully that gives you some assurance, the first part of your question. The report card, actually I'm going to pause there just to check if Tom wants to come in on any of that at all before I go into the report card bit.
You said literally everything I was thinking, Nabil. Nothing to add.
The report cards, I've got to be a bit careful, not completely my area, so I want to take it away. But as firstly, I think the first thing is being consulted on. So please do feed into that consultation, including the financial management, what you think about that, what's right, what should be included. But it is absolutely being seen as a whole school thing. And again, a recognition, it's not just teacher-focused report card, which we think is absolutely right. And that's the whole point of the report card. That is, it gives a much more rounded picture of school. So there's absolutely straight away inbuilt in there, there's a recognition for it, but also we're looking at exactly who are we providing the right support for the staff. I think that's a general move towards accountability anyway, that staff was being supported in the measures that we care about and the measures that are going in the report card. So absolutely, I think generally for what I said previously, but generally the report card itself is almost a recognition that actually it's a whole school thing and not just what teachers are doing, but the whole school system is doing, and very important part the support staff are playing. So absolutely, I think you should say that as signaling, but if you have more specific questions on that, I can pick up outside.
Very much. Tom, we have two questions that I'm going to group together on national funding formula. The first one is whether we can confirm the underlying increase to the national funding formula funding streams, excluding rolled-in grants, is only around 0.5%. And if so, there's a question about our expectations on schools managing with that level of increase. And the second question, looking at the indicative NFF rates, these have gone up by 0.5%. So yeah, I think there's the same point being made by somebody else in the chat there. Anything you'd like to say on that?
Yeah. So as I say, do look at the figures we put out. Coming to the right calculation is slightly complicated. As I said earlier about the fact of the kind of taking account of last year's 24 pay award and how that plays through into this year. So my main advice to everyone is concentrate on the totals, see how that plays against the costs that your school is facing. I don't think I have a lot more to add to what I said previously. The increases will mean for a number of schools that there are efficiencies to be needing to be found next year, because that is the situation that the public sector is finding itself in across the board, as the government seeks to find the right balance between the taxes it can bring in and the expenditure and the pressures that it faces. It is not going to be an easy year for schools, I do not believe, and that kind of reflected in that fact, as I mentioned, the minimum funding guarantee has been taken down again, so that the some schools will face cash decreases per pupil, but in the vicinity of 0.5%, and it does vary depending on different factors, is not wrong. As I say, it's a little difficult to come down to a single definitive figure. This is the right number. I would nail my colours too, but I'm not disputing the tenor of the questions here. In that it's a tricky year. Hopefully, the next spending review will provide more relief for us. We'll certainly be trying to make that the case, but as I hint again, so will the rest of the public sector, and it will be a hard-fought battle.
Well, thank you for that response. Gemma, we've had a question here on the back of complexity of some of our revenue income streams, and the question is: so all schools put together an Excel spreadsheet with revenue grants. Some are financial years and some are academic years, which can cause quite a lot of confusion. Then there are some grants like senior mental health, which we have no idea if we qualify for, as senior leadership team doesn't always communicate that message. And the question goes on to ask, is there any chance ESFA could create an Excel spreadsheet which profiles monthly all the income streams for schools, and that will help us forecast more accurately? Over to you, Gemma, on that one.
Thank you. Such an important point, and there are two sides to this. One is trying to avoid that complexity arising in the first place. It is better for us as a department, it's better for my team, it's better for all of you if we don't have lots of complex funding streams. And so we have agreed some principles actually as a department that we all buy into, with the aim of simplifying existing funding, and to the extent that new funding streams are created, the way we design those to minimise complexity. And Thomas talked today about where we can always rolling things into the NFF and moving away from standalone grants. So that is part one, where so you have mine and Tom's wholehearted support on trying to simplify funding streams. It's in all of our interests. And then the second part of it is actually what we can do to try and communicate your funding allocations, your payments, in the most joined up and simple manner. That is something that is part of my funding service strategy. We have been making improvements on that this year. At the moment, you have to go to multiple places to get information about your allocations, and they're not all set out in a uniform way. That's not good enough. We want to bring it together into one place. Unfortunately, it is not that simple for us to do so. So one of the things we've been making progress on this year is actually properly digitising the way we present, for example, GAG allocations. So rather than just giving you a PDF, it's a very static thing, that you will be able to view in your digital account, what you're getting and when, etc. And those are the sorts of steps that allow us to then start bringing more things together. So some academies have been able to access that for this year, and our goal is that for the 25-26 allocations, they'll all be communicated in that way. And we've also got user research going on right now on other things that we can do to try and bring funding information together in one place. What's the stuff that causes you most pain? What would be most helpful to you? And we really, really welcome people giving up their time to engage with us in that way, so that we can redesign our services to make them easier for you. So absolutely, we're totally committed to it. And I do hope that you will start to see progress on that through this year. But it's going to take us a while to crack it, but we're totally committed to that goal.
Yeah, but thank you. And it's such an important thing for us to try and do, isn't it? You know, sort of make life easier and make things simpler for the sector. I know it doesn't always feel like we have that at our heart, but we led a simplification exercise on the regulatory side for Academy Trust a year or so ago. And again, you know, would echo your point about if there are any ideas about things that the sector is really grappling with that you think we could do something about and should do something about to save colleagues time, effort, confusion, please do get in touch. We really value the feedback, and we do act on it. So yeah, fantastic.
And Gavin, do you mind, sorry, if I just take the opportunity to make a plug for we recently in the ESFA update included a link to a survey on Trust Academy's experience of interacting with our funding service. 5 questions about the extent to which it meets your needs. You have confidence in the information we give you. You can find answers when you have questions. Please do. It will come round again in the next update. We really, really welcome your feedback. It's the first time we've done something of this kind, and we want to hear it all, the good, the bad and the ugly, because that's how we improve and get better. So please do look out for that and feed in your thoughts.
Thanks very much. Great. We've had I think a couple of questions for you, Tom, in the chat. We've had, first of all, a question about will the new national insurance grants take into account suppliers passing on their national insurance costs to schools? Some suppliers have already written to say that they'll be increasing their prices from April to take into account their new national insurance costs. And I don't know if there is much we can say on this at the moment, but I just wanted to check if there is anything you'd like to say.
Yeah, the compensation that the department has been promised by Treasury will be based on the national insurance contributions being paid by schools, just as they will for the NHS will get money in relation to the to the NICS insurance being paid by hospitals and the NHS. So I don't believe we're going to be getting any specific money in relation to the likely impact on effectively general inflation as a result of NIC's impact on private sector employers. That said, I did see at the budget that the inflation forecasts for next year, which were used to kind of help set budgets, went up from the forecasts that they were prior to the budget. And I rather suspect that one of the factors behind that will have been an expectation that the NICS increases will to some extent feed through into price rises, where that's the only thing that a seller can do. So it's sort of implicitly recognized within the overall system through that calculation of what we expect inflation to be. But no, the amount of money we are going to get from Treasury and then we'll be passing on to schools will be based on looking at the actual NICS income that Treasury have been receiving from schools themselves.
Thank you. And we've had a question about the basis for funding allocations. And the question is, with pay, pension, national insurance grants, why do we base our funding allocation on pupil numbers? Why don't we use actual payroll costs as we get this information from the workforce census? So anything you'd like to say on that one?
Sure, because we've had this discussion a number of times on pay and pensions before, and thought again through in relation to national insurance contributions. There are two fundamental reasons. One's very much operational, and the other is rather more philosophical, I suppose. Operationally, we know we're happy with the quality of the workforce census data for using it as national figures. It is not that great in relation to individual schools, which is to say that the replies from some schools are probably a little bit questionable. So we would worry about using data of that quality to be making funding decisions. Some people would get more than they merited, some people would get less. Over a long time, we could make a big effort to really make sure everyone's workforce census data was coming in at top-notch level, but it would be quite a lot of work, and it would certainly make greater demands of schools. And that kind of brings me to the philosophical side of it, which in some ways I think is the bigger one, which is that we have always shied away from using actual spending data of any sort to determine an individual institution's funding, because we don't think the spending decisions that a school have made should then drive the funding that a school gets. That creates perverse incentives, it creates moral hazard, and it would mean ultimately that we'd stop funding schools on the basis of the characteristics of the people they're trying to serve, and do it more on the basis of historical decisions that have been made in a school. So we do think it is right as a matter of principle that what we do is we ensure that two schools who are in the same circumstances, by which I mean have a similar cohort of pupils whom they are seeking to provide the best education for, those two schools should receive the same funding levels. And we deliver that within the funding system by focusing on the pupils, on the characteristics of the school itself, lump sum, etc. Do you face area costs? But we don't look back to the outcome of the spending decisions that a school has made.
Thanks very much. Judy, we've had a question linked in a way back to our earlier question about the timing of budgets, but the question is, the budget forecast return is essentially a fictional document, as we don't know year 2 and 3 income because we haven't yet had our funding allocations for those years. And as we've said, sometimes actually year 1 is quite difficult for the sector, given the timing of things like teacher pay announcements. I was wondering if there's anything you'd like to say, Judy, on that question.
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. I do recognise those challenges, I think it's fair to say, but the budget forecast data is important to us as it really helps us to understand what's broadly happening in the sector and how trusts are planning to spend their manage their finances. But as I say, we do recognise the limitations that exist for the reason that the questioner has just mentioned. So we do view the information in light of that context, I think it's fair to say.
Thank you very much. Well, that brings us to the end of our panel session. Can I thank everybody for asking those questions and upvoting those questions in the chat? And can I, of course, thank our panel members, Gemma, Tom, Judy, and Nabil here in London. Thank you so much, guys, for answering those questions for us today. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our substantive agenda for today's event. But before we go, we wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up of some of the events that are coming up at future Power Hours. And you can see a list of future events we have coming up on your screen now. I also really need to give another plug for the survey, and you have a link to that survey in the QR code, again, featuring on your screen at the moment. We really do use the feedback. We use it to influence our future events, think about the kind of content we include at any future events, things like the frequency of the events that we hold. So please do feed us back your thoughts through that QR code or that survey link on screen now. But I think that brings us to the end of the national event for now. Thank you to all the presenters today. Thank you to everybody who attended the event. And thank you to all the people that are working behind the scenes to get the IT and questions coming through and flowing through and keeping us all on track and on time. It's really very much appreciated. But for now, bye, everybody, and see you at the next event.